Yes. A very good evening to all the viewers. I am Aishwarya and I welcome you at the Mahayadi News platform, where we conduct discussions related to education, career, and life and all. And our today's topic for discussion is podcasting for beginners. And our guest is Mr. Manik Kamra today. And he is not just a host of one podcast show, but he hosts two podcast shows. And I know you must be listening to various podcast shows on different streaming platforms like Spotify, YouTube, or even Google Podcast. So Manik, how do you feel on the other side of the mic? Because you have always been the host of the show. So how does
Yes.
it feel to be the guest of the show today?
Hi, Shreya, first of all, and thanks so much for having me. Um, it feels weird to be on the other side because when you are on the side in which on which side you are in the
Yeah,
control of the conversation, and when you're no longer control, like if you cannot control the conversation, it feels weird because it's not going your way. The questions are
yeah,
gonna come from you, and you're going to have to sort of react to your questions. It feels different, but I'm really happy that I have the opportunity to maybe impact someone's life or just add value to someone's life or ensure that 30-40 minutes our conversation that's going to be, it adds value to anyone who is listening to their life. So thanks so much for having me, Ashwarya. It means a lot.
yeah. Thank you so much for being here. I am hoping for a fruitful conversation for the next 40-50 minutes. So I would
Absolutely.
like to, yeah, so I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to our viewers. So Manik Kamra has been into podcasting, data privacy, social development, and education for the past 5 years. He belongs to rural Punjab and he is living in Chandigarh city for the past 7 years. And he owns two podcast show, the Manik Kamra podcast and the Jantak show. And then apart from this, he also works as a data privacy officer at the Community Lab. And in past, he have led a team of around 200 people from in which there were people from 10 different countries, and he has been associated with Spotify Nepal during his stay in Nepal. So he has a really good profile, and I feel he is the best candidate for the show podcasting for beginners. So welcome to the show again, Manik. So, would you like to tell a bit about your background and schooling?
Of course, Aishwarya. Thanks so much for that sweet introduction, first of all. As you rightly said, I come from the rural area of Punjab. Um didn't have any kind of luxuries. Did not go to a really good school. Like it was the best school in the town, but as you compare it to the
The
metropolitan
city
cities or
schools.
even
Yeah,
bigger cities like Chandigarh, it was nothing, to be honest. So the school's name is Sacred Heart Convent School. I did my schooling from there, and yes, like I had a very simple life. I was into sports. I was into quizzing and everything, but again, the uh, probably the intellect level or the level or the IQ level was not as good as you see in the in the bigger cities.
yeah,
Just had a very normal, very basic life. But then in 2014, I moved to Chandigarh to pursue my higher studies, basically 11th and 12th. So I did that. After that, I started college, but till very recently, I did not graduate. Uh, I didn't want to. I went to
yeah,
Nepal. I wanted to pursue something else. So I was in Nepal for 1 year. I was supposed to go to Vietnam after that, but then COVID happened. So I had to come back in 2020. And then I thought, okay, I'm free. I should, uh, sort of just complete my degree. So I completed my business administration. And for the last 6 months, I had been associated with an organization called Second Act, where I
yeah,
was basically helping them with the business, getting partnerships for the existing projects, and also preparing, doing research for the new projects. And I'm also serving as data privacy officer for Community Lab. It's an
yeah,
NGO where we help people to basically get jobs. We help them with their CV, with their LinkedIn, with their interview, and other skills as well, like how to resolve conflicts or how to be inclusive in a workplace. So all the data, basically, all the people who come to us, their data should be protected. So I take care of that. Just
yeah,
in very simple words, I ensure that their data is not misused. No one stores their data. The data is deleted as soon as we have delivered our service to
Yeah,
them. So that's the gist of what I do at Community Lab. Previously, I'd been associated with Spotify Nepal as well, where again I served as data privacy consultant and even finance consultant as well, because it's a
yeah, yeah,
back in Nepal, it's a startup. So yes, I had that role as well. And as you said, I was in Nepal for 1 year. I was leading an organization called ISIC. I was the CEO for that. And we
yeah,
had big clients like Coca-Cola, Encel, like the biggest company in Nepal,
yeah,
Asian Development Bank, one of the biggest development banks of the world,
yeah.
uh, TCS, Hard Rock, what else? Deccan University.
Yeah.
So all these
We'll
big names we
definitely
had there.
discuss about that. Yeah, yeah, sure,
Of
sure.
course.
I have been, it's been almost more than 1 year since you are hosting the Manik Kamra podcast show, since you started with the show. And I am the active listener of the show because I
Thank
remember
you.
the very first episode, which was the future of work, and the latest
With
episode, which
Abhinav
is about
Chawli.
Hani Puja. So, yeah, I always enjoy listening to your podcast episodes at Jantak Show also, and at the Manik Kamra podcast show also. So, when did you decide to start your own podcast, or, how did you decide to go into the podcasting thing? Uh, yeah, but it will be really good if you just quickly tell our viewers what is podcast, and then you can continue with the question.
Of course. So podcast is basically, if you go back, let's say 50 years, we had radios, right? Uh,
Yeah,
so podcast is like radio, but there's just one difference. Back in the day, radio is like, you could not listen to your favorite episodes at any point of time. There
yeah,
used to be
yeah,
like fixed times. Okay, 6 to 7 supposed to be X, then 8 to 9 is
yeah,
supposed to be Y. But podcast is like a radio, but you can listen to it anytime. It's an
anytime.
audio experience, but the ones that I do also has a video element to it, like for people who want to opt for that. So that's basically podcast or vodcast if video is involved as well. How did I get into podcasting? So that's very interesting. I came back from Nepal, and I never knew that I could, have a good conversation. I did not know that I'm a good host. So there's a friend
Yeah,
of mine. I was pushing him, okay, I will start a podcast. Like, I'll invest all the money. You should be the face because I don't have the confidence to host a conversation. But
yeah,
then it was COVID, and like, it just did, like, we could not connect because he was at
yeah,
his home, I was at my home, and like, we just could not meet for that.
yeah,
So there's this Diwali sale, and I thought, okay, fuck it. I should just buy a mic and maybe let's see what happens. So I got a mic and I did some a few trial podcasts and they went well. So I thought, okay, why not release them because I've already recorded them.
yeah,
So if that's how it's a I am an accidental podcaster. I had no intent to enter into
yeah.
podcasting. It just happened.
And how was your parents' reaction when you told them that I want to be into podcasting, or I want to start my own podcast?
They, I don't think they had an idea that it's going to be a long-term thing. They thought, okay, he has gotten a mic. Maybe he'll maybe he'll do some stuff and just leave this mic after what, say, a month or two. But then eventually, when he started Jantak show in January 2020, we got
Yeah,
a first really good response. We got really good people like the best actors of Punjabi industry, cabinet ministers, and big name like Gul Panag and then
yeah,
Gurpreet Boogie, all of these people. Uh, so then they were really proud because a lot of relatives would call my mom and dad and they would tell them, okay, so Manik
yeah,
is doing this. He interviews people, so they don't understand the concept of podcast, but they say, okay, he interviews people, which is
yeah,
like that's true. Interview is a component of a podcast. So
yeah,
yeah, now they feel okay. They feel proud that I've been doing this, and they have been supportive throughout. And it's a privilege, honestly. I have that privilege. My parents have been supportive of me being a podcaster, but also for people out there, just wanted to tell that I also had a full-time job. So I was doing podcasting and a full-time job, and also volunteering at a
yeah,
couple of different organizations.
yeah,
So
yeah. So
because
that
it was
L of
not
multitasking. Yeah,
absolutely, but so we'll speak about the financial component later in the conversation. But yes, I also had a full-time job that is getting me money.
Yeah. So that we know that you're doing it as a side gig, and you also have your full-time job also.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, Manik, when you decided to start the Jantak show or the Manik Kamra podcast, did you had a theme in your mind, like we should take life experiences, or there are few podcasts who are mythological or science based? So, did you had a theme in your mind before starting these two shows?
Uh, so I sort of went inside and understood, okay, what am I good at? Um, I could not find a niche, but overall, I was really good at having conversations.
Yeah.
My time with ISEC, the organization that I was part of for
Yeah.
almost 4 years, I had been really good at hosting like intimate spaces, like spaces for let's say five, six people, and getting them talk about various things that they never thought of. So
Yeah.
I thought, okay, I don't have a niche like let's say mythology or true crime or maybe science fiction. I'm not good at that, but I'm generally good at having conversations and getting those thoughts out of people that they never thought they had. Right. So
Yeah.
and because due to ISEC, I had network in like I don't know, like 50 different countries in the world.
Oh.
So I thought, okay, the objective was to archive these stories because every day I was having really good conversations with people. But I thought, okay, why not record them and
Yeah,
store
yeah.
them somewhere so that maybe somewhere out there there's a person who would
Benefit
need
the
these conversations. So that was the idea. I never thought, okay, I would want to earn money or something. Just started, and it was like a storage for me. Spotify is a storage for me where I am storing good conversations.
Yeah,
But that turned out to be a podcast. So that was the objective for the Mani Kamra podcast. Jantak show. A friend of mine, Ayush Bajaj, he's
yeah,
my partner at Jantak show. He came to me with this idea. So he had been listening to my podcast, the Mani Kamra podcast, and he said, okay, why not? Why not add a video element and why not have conversation with people of who who have a bigger platform, like again like celebrities and politicians. So even today I don't know a podcast that has had politicians as a guest, right? So we
yeah,
thought, okay, we want to destigmatize politics, and because people especially in Punjab see politics in a very different way. I think whole India, they see politics as a very bad thing. The
yeah,
connotations that are attached are really bad. So our main
yeah,
objective was to demystify politics, demystify politicians, and demystify some famous people, what's their vision, what drives them, so all of these things. So that was the idea of Jantak show.
yeah. That's amazing. So yeah, because when I listen to the Manik Kamra podcast, then I have seen people from different walks of life. I mean, there are people who are into public policy, who are startup founders, or I have heard a episode where it was a tattoo artist also. So
Yes,
I got
just
to
me.
learn a
Yeah.
lot of things from them. So I feel since you have a very good network, you can connect to these people, and they are very much coming to your podcast and having these wonderful conversations. So even I remember it's been a year back since we had a conversation on networking. So
Of
what
course.
do you think about networking? Because you are the person who introduced me to networking, and how important you told me how important networking is. So I would like to know, and our viewers will also be happy to know how important is networking, and how can one network in 21st century, given all the digitalized platforms.
Of course, Ishwarya, I think so. It's a very common saying that your network is your network, and I do believe that because the kind of people who are in your network eventually decides what you do or what you think. For example, if your
Yeah,
network has people who, let's say, talk about cricket, then your thoughts would be influenced by cricket. If you have people in your network, like if you are in a network of entrepreneurs, even if you don't have a startup, you are eventually going to think about maybe starting something of your own, or how you can apply the principles of entrepreneurship in your job or in your business, whatever, right?
yeah,
uh, so that's that. Like I think again, I like, I agree with this thing that your network is your net worth. How can a person network in the 21st century? I'll give my example. The biggest advantage that I have of running two podcasts is the kind of network that I make, right? I get to meet a lot of people. So you see it this way, कि podcast एक बहाना है to just get introduced to like good
Yeah,
bunch of
just
people.
to develop your network and to meet good people. Yeah,
Of course, although like there's an objective of the conversation as well, but just being in the same room as someone who has, let's say, 50 years of political experience, or who has been in, let's say, 50 movies, 100 movies, I think it's an honor, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to be in the same room as them, and have a 50, 60 minutes conversation with them. So network is really, really important. I'd say it may sound controversial, but I think your college or university is a brilliant networking place. It's not going to teach you a lot of things, but
yeah,
the most important thing that you can do is network in your university, network in your college, and the best tool to the best tool to network. Aishwarya, if you can tell everyone, how did we meet? How did we get introduced?
yeah. So basically, I met Manik through Sakonsa. So I was volunteering at Sakonsa, and Manik was already associated with Sakonsa. So that's how we met, and yeah, so volunteering. So yeah, we met at an
But
NGO.
I should, I think, correct you, Aishwarya. You were the one who was taking my interview back in the day. For seconds,
Oh
I had
yes,
applied.
yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
so
I interviewed you. Yeah,
yeah, for everyone, like, if irrespective of you are in a college, if you're not in a college, if you're in a school, there are multiple organizations where you can meet other people who you may not be able to meet in your daily life. For example, if I am from Punjab University in Chandigarh, uh, I am meeting people only from Punjab University, right? But what if I want to meet someone from IIT Delhi? What if I
yeah,
want to meet someone from IIT Bombay? I'm not gonna get into IIT, right? I
yeah.
I don't have the I
You
don't have the
can.
capacity. I don't have the capacity, but I'll try to find commonality. And these
Yeah,
organizations like ISEC, like Sakonsa, like um, Rod Tract, all of
Rotary
these
Club.
organizations have
Yeah,
people from all the colleges, all the
yeah,
spheres of life. You would
yeah.
not believe, Aishwarya, I have like I hang out with people of 40 years of age. I hang out with people of 18 years of age. I'm friends with the person who is 52. I'm friends with the person who is 14. So all of these happened because I used to volunteer with a couple of organizations. Even with you,
Yeah.
you beautifully led the project. I think where we created a financial literacy course with
Financial literacy.
Sakonsa.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
just like uh, I think in India, the scene of going into parties and networking is not so much, or the networking spaces are not so much. But through these organizations, through your college, through your university, clubs, and everything, you can network with a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not limited to networking with people of your age, but like why not listen to experiences
Yeah.
of people who are older than you, or why not understand the challenges of people who are younger than you, right?
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
don't limit yourself.
Yeah.
Networking is an amazing tool, but if you are going to limit yourself with like people of your age, your mind is not going to get exposed to new things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
network with like people of all age, different
Yeah.
spheres of life, and you're going to do fine.
That's amazing, Manik. The thoughts you have presented just now are just amazing. And I would also like to add one thing. Before Sakonsa, we had an interaction on LinkedIn also. So LinkedIn also
Yes.
great platform to networking. So yeah. So my next question comes is, when you decided to start your own podcast, did you face any difficulties, and how did you overcome those difficulties? Whether they can be
So
monetary or we had lockdown, so that can be one of the reasons.
the biggest challenge, so I'll go back to 2020. The
Yes,
biggest challenge was, I think, understanding how to use the equipment. If you would listen to first 2 3 episodes of the Manik Kamra podcast, the voice was really bad. Like the audio quality, because I had no idea how to use a mic, or I had no
Yeah.
idea how to edit audio or something. But eventually I learned on the job. We had no other people who would help us with audio editing or something. It was just like for the Manik Kamra podcast, it was just me, and for the Jantak show, it was just Ayush and I, my partner at the Jantak show. For
Yeah.
Jantak show, there were more challenges because it was a video, it
Having,
had a video component as well to it, and we had to sometimes travel to other places to because our guests also are famous. So there have been times when we had to wait like 4 or 5 hours just to
yeah,
get someone
yeah,
on the podcast. Then COVID happened, in the second wave of COVID happened, and
yeah,
we had lockdown. So a lot of our guests were reluctant of being on a podcast, because again, if you wear mask and everything, the quality is not as
yeah,
good, or the
yeah,
conversation quality is not as good. Uh, so yeah, that has happened, but the main thing is, how do you see challenges? The way I see challenges is that they give me something to learn, right?
yeah,
For example, COVID hit, then for example, even now, there are times when we don't have guests for the podcast. So we thought, okay, why not create our own content? So now we have
yeah.
started creating our own content, because now the dependence, we are not being dependent on someone
The
else.
guest.
So we have
Yeah,
learned a lot of things. So if you see challenges or failures as uh, a learning opportunity, then everything is going to fall into place. Plus,
yeah,
you also have a bahana, no? If you fail, तो आप कह सकते हो कि यार नहीं, I learned something. Right? It's not a
yeah,
failure.
yeah,
I
yeah,
won because I learned something. It's a win-win
yeah.
situation for me. So yeah, I'm sorry for my dogs.
No worries, no worries.
So someone had rung the bell, and then they just start barking.
Yeah, yeah, no problem,
Uh,
no problem.
Plus, for people, actually, I would want to add, for people who are listening, they can drop their questions in the comment box.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, 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 yeah. If you have, I request all the viewers, if you have any questions, Manik will be really happy to answer your questions. So please put up your questions in the comment box. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes,
So yes, Aishwarya, that is my answer for the networking bit and the challenges that I faced in the podcast.
yeah, yeah. So moving ahead, Manik. Before starting anything, whether it's a podcast, whether you are into research, or whether you are into data privacy or data science, we need a certain sort of skill set. So, what is the required skill set for podcast, and how can one develop that sort of skill set?
I think the most important thing is you have to be focused, because in a conversation, if you're distracted, it's not going to be a good conversation. Again,
Yeah,
I'm really sorry for the dogs. You have
no,
to be really focused here. And again, this is ironical, because I'm not being focused because of my dogs. But yes,
yeah,
in a conversation, in a podcast, the setting is very different. You
yeah,
have to be focused. So I'll give an example. So I don't know how many people would know Gurpreet Singh Ghuggi. He's a comedian. He's a Punjabi actor. He's really famous. So when we were having a conversation with him on the podcast, it started raining, right? So it was,
yeah,
so he had come like 5 hours late. So we were supposed to start at 1 p.m. We started at 6 p.m. uh, it was raining. The light was getting low, because again, it's a video component. So there were a lot of challenges, but then I did not let, if you see the episode, you will understand the rains there, but
yeah.
still
I
we
guess it
were
was
going ahead
the
with the
recent,
conversation.
yeah, it was the recent show on Jantak show,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah, I did watch that show. Yeah,
So it was raining, and we continued the conversation, because there was no way I could have been distracted. So the most important skill that you need for podcast is you need to be focused. I think that's the most difficult bit of it, because conversation and everything, you can develop them over the time, but being focused, especially in this time of the time of instant gratification, it's really difficult for a person to be focused on a conversation, because your mind tends to wander off somewhere else. Plus the
yeah,
conversations, so we do it in one go, 60 minutes of conversation in one single go, without a single distraction in front of the camera. I don't
yeah,
think anyone else does it, but we do that. And
yeah, yeah.
You just have to be focused. That's the most important skill that you need. Except that I think for people who want to get into, like, like mythology podcast or true crime podcast, you need various, like, voice modulation,
Yeah.
or how you can express your emotions on an audio platform, right? Because again, true crime, mythology, science, business, all of these podcasts, they, because it's a pure storytelling, you have to be very good with expressing emotions through your voice. So voice
Yeah.
modulation is another skill that you need. Uh, Except that, like, there are a couple of other skills, like you need to know marketing, because at the end of the day you need to market your podcast.
Yeah.
You need to
Yeah.
know how to do video editing, because, or audio editing for that. Like, if it's an audio thing, you need to know audio editing. If you're also adding video, you need to know video editing as well. So I think these are the skills that you need. So if you're focused, everything else falls into place, because the
Yeah.
main part is the conversation. Once you have the recorded conversation, you can learn how to
Yeah.
edit an audio,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
you can learn how to edit a video. You can learn marketing, but the you will not get second chance for the conversation. Conversation एक बार होगी तो it's done. You can't go back to the
Yeah.
person
And yeah.
and ask them to redo it. It cannot
Yeah.
happen. That
Yeah.
particular focus has to be there in the conversation.
Yeah.
Plus I think one thing I missed is that you have to be you have to read a lot. For example, let's say if I am having a conversation about inclusive fashion or sustainable fashion, or if I am having a conversation about, let's say, the stereotype of Punjabis in Bollywood. I need
Yeah.
to do research तो है ही है.
Yes.
In order to have a good conversation, I myself have, because podcast is not a one-way thing, right? It's a two-way
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
So I have to know enough of that topic to hold a conversation. So
Yes.
very
Yes.
recently we had Ritu Kochar. She is the founder of INIFT, the biggest fashion designing institute in India.
Yeah.
Of course, she's an expert in sustainable fashion, inclusive fashion, or everything that has fashion.
Yeah.
But for
Related to
me,
fashion.
like a person like me, I had to read a lot to understand. I read couple of I'll tell you, I read 12 books,
Oh
multiple
my.
articles, just to, because
Oh
I
my.
also had this, okay, what if she says something that I don't understand? So in
Yeah.
order
Yeah.
to ensure that does not happen, I read a lot. Like, I was on a reading spree for 15 days, and that's how I prepared for a podcast with Ritu Kochar. So you have to read a lot, and you have
Yeah.
to be, like, you have to be okay with reading a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So I guess you have answered my previous, my next question, because my next question was, how do you prepare for the podcast? So yeah, researching is very much necessary, because when I also came for this particular conversation, I had to go back to the YouTube channel or the Instagram to just to know about your show, and just to read a lot about a bit about bit about podcasting. So yeah. My next question is,
But no, no, Aishwarya, I like to add some things to this.
yeah, yeah,
Uh, so when you are a 24-year-old guy or a
yeah,
human, and when you're interacting with someone who is, let's say, 55 years old with with, let's say, 2 million following, 3 million following, or at a very good position in government, you have
yeah,
to ensure that you need to understand you'll just get one chance with them. You have to
yeah,
leave a good impression on them, right?
yeah. The
So
first
if I
impression.
go, let's say, okay, let's say the current CM of or let's say current PM is Narendra Modi, right?
Yeah,
If I'm having him on the podcast, I can't just Google Narendra Modi and read like top three, four articles and prepare my questions. I have
yeah,
to do a deep research, because I'll just get one single shot with him, and it has to be amazing. It has to be phenomenal.
yeah,
He should remember that Manik Kamra had
yeah,
come, the person from Jantak Show had come, and he had an amazing, he had a tremendous conversation with me. So you have to do a
yeah,
very deep. So I'll tell you my process of research.
Yeah, yeah.
For example, very recently we had just Singh Nagra on the podcast. So he produces off-roading vehicles. He does multiple things I can't even tell you. Right? He's a VP at a really good company, but his social media presence is very low. Right? So how would you understand? How would you know a person? Because right now for a research, the only source is social media, right?
Social
So
media. Yeah, your LinkedIn or your Facebook.
I went through his companies. So every company has to uh, publish their annual report, right? So I knew he's a VP of a company. So I went to the company's website. I downloaded their annual reports. I
That's
read
amazing.
whatever. So PDF you can search. So I did search Jaskinder Singh Nagra. I understood okay what he does, what kind of person he is, and then on LinkedIn I go to LinkedIn and see what not only what kind of person, what kind of post a person posts, but also what kind of post a person likes or what kind of comments a person does, because that
Yeah.
also tells you a lot. Like you can do a psychoanalysis of a person basically.
Yeah, basically his interests or in my or his mindset. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do that because again, I always think that I'm just going to get one shot with this person and I have to make it remember some. I have to give this person something to remember.
Mhm.
So I do that, and then I don't prepare questions honestly because the kind of conversations, like it's just my style. I'm not. It's not my recommendation for people who feel comfortable with questions. Like you have to understand what suits you. For me, it's better to have questions on the spot.
Yeah.
So I have conversations and whatever a person answers, then and there only I think of the next question because the question has to be related to the previous one.
Yeah.
Sorry, then only the conversation would be linked.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
Exactly.
yeah,
So that's
uh,
the
that's my process of preparing.
yeah. Yeah, so that's a great input from your side, and it's a great insight into how you can research about a particular person. It's not like a stalking purpose, but if you want to have a conversation with a person, then this is the way you can research about the person. So yeah, thank you so much for your answer, Manik. My next question is, since you have your podcast show on YouTube also and on Spotify also, so do you get any monetary benefits from YouTube and Spotify? And if someone wants to, it will be really helpful if you can answer this from a perspective of someone who wants to continue podcasting as a full-time thing. So, can a person survive just on the podcast thing?
Right, so it's a very tricky question because as of now, especially market in India is very new. My speculation is that 2 years down the line, like by the end of 2024, the market is going to boom. As of now, people are getting used to the format because people are used to watch the videos, but eventually your eyes they get tired. Plus
Yeah,
for example, when I drive I listen to a lot of podcasts, or when I cook something I listen to podcasts, or whenever if I'm doing random things I just switch on podcast.
yeah,
But there are the the majority of people in India they're getting used to this. So as of now, if you really want to, if you want to make this a full-time thing, if you want to make podcasting a full-time thing, I'll tell you what could be the possible revenue streams. First, if you're putting it on YouTube, then of course, if you can monetize, like after you have 4,000 hours and 10,000 subscribers, YouTube pays you for every view, right? That's one revenue stream. Second, even Anchor, which is owned by Spotify, they
yeah.
also pay you for every listen a person listens, listen to your podcast. They pay you some, I think they pay you 0 point like 5 cents,
Oh,
which is basically what I don't know, like you can do the math, 5 cents for
yeah,
every listen, right? But then let's say if you have 15,000 listeners for every podcast, then you can get sponsors. You can get
yeah,
sponsorships. Even
yeah,
if you have, let's say, I'd say 10,000 per podcast, then you can, or 10,000 views per YouTube video for let's say 30 40 minutes, you can easily get sponsors, local sponsors. For example, if I am based in
Yeah.
Chandigarh and if majority of my guests are in North India, then lot of sponsors in Chandigarh would be, or in Punjab or in Himachal or Haryana would be interested to sponsor the podcast. Although we have not gone out there and looked for sponsors as of now because we're focusing on more on creating the content. But yeah, these are the revenue streams. But honestly, I would not recommend anyone to go full time into podcasting as of now.
Yeah.
You can start it as a side thing, and then you
Side
can
thing.
see the response. Like, because again, all there are already a lot of podcasters, but there's a huge potential to get into the market. But even on the other side, like supply you can create, but demand is also evolving by the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So don't go full time into podcasting as of now. But maybe by the start of 2022, I think, sorry, 2023, you can think of getting into podcasting for the full time. But there are podcasts that earn a lot of money. Joe Rogan is obviously the best in the world. For India, it's the Ranveer show. It's the best podcast. I think he recently got, I think, $1 million contract with Spotify.
Yeah.
Then there are Spotify originals, Gaurav Kapoor, Gul Panag,
Yeah.
um, Harsha Bogle. So these people
Yeah.
have
Harsha.
podcasts that are produced by Spotify. So they earn
Yeah.
money, but they are also celebrities. So
Yeah.
I would suggest start podcasting as a, as a tool for networking or as a tool to enhance your skill. If you get
Yeah.
good response, then you can think of getting into
So,
it full time, but
full
don't
time.
go full throttle into podcasting in the
Yeah.
initial phase.
Yeah. So, can you list platforms other than Spotify where one can start their own podcast, or are there any platforms other than Spotify?
There are, so in India, majority of people do listen it on Spotify. Second is Apple Podcast, and third is Google Podcast.
Yeah.
So for people like who want to start putting out podcast, there's a website, there's an app called Anchor.fm. It's owned by Spotify now. It was not owned by Spotify, but now they have acquired it. So
Okay.
you go. So what you have to do, you record your episode, or you record whatever you want to. You go to Anchor, you create your profile. You have to do couple of things, like you have to because there has to be a cover for your podcast. So you have to create your cover. You have to maybe create your logo as well if you want, and then
Yeah.
you can upload it on Anchor. And Anchor is a platform that it's a distributing platform. It distributes your podcast to all the platforms that are out there, like
Mm.
Google,
Yeah.
Apple, Spotify, all of that. YouTube is
Yeah.
not you because it's not a typical podcasting platform. But then
Yeah.
even Geo Podcast, Savan Podcast, so Anchor does all of
Mm.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you
Thank you
can
so much.
just use one single tool, which is Anchor, and
Yeah.
it will do the work for you.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Manik. And since you have been into podcasting since January 2020, we had a lot of discussion about networking and all sort of things. But how can you evaluate yourself, the Manik before starting the podcast and after the podcast? So have podcast helped into developing your perspective or your overall thought process after talking to these many people.
Absolutely, and I think I'll correct you and I'll correct myself as well, because 2020, 21 are like very, I don't know, I don't even remember the years, but I got into podcasting in October 2020 and Jantak Show was started in January 2021. So it's
Yeah.
not even been a year as of now.
Okay. Yeah.
But now coming back to your question, uh, it's a tough question. I'll have to think about that. But honestly, with every see, Aishwarya, every experience that you have, be it be it as small as playing outside with a child or playing outside with a dog, it has an impact on you, right?
Yeah.
It depends how strong the impact is. I've
Yeah.
had conversations that had no impact on me or very less impact on me. I've had conversations that absolutely changed how I thought I'll give an example. So we had a person called Asim Ghavri on the podcast. He's a very young entrepreneur from Chandigarh running a like a multi-million company, multi-million dollar company. Has expanded into a couple of countries. Very young, like 28, 29-year old cool guy. So the kind of thoughts I had for entrepreneurship, he changed them. He is blown away with the kind of thoughts he had for entrepreneurship, right? So like that conversation had a huge impact on me. But then conversation like, let's say, like something that I already know, right? But see, Aishwarya, you have to understand, I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for people who are consuming the content. So there
Yeah,
are times when I have conversations with people that I already know of, or I already have an idea. For example, let's say, just imagine I create something about data privacy. I
yeah,
already know a bit about it, but I want other people to know it as well,
yeah, yeah,
right? But the biggest change I've seen in me after I've gotten into podcasting is I've become a better listener. I have become more inclusive. I have become more understanding of what other people think, because through these conversations I realized that there are multiple perspectives in the world, and you don't have to stick to yours. You have to be understanding of the other person's
yeah,
perspective as well. So that
yeah,
taught me empathy, right?
yeah.
It has
You have
made me
to
more,
get closer.
yeah,
Yeah.
it has made me more empathetic. And I think that's the biggest change that I've seen in myself after I've gotten into podcasting.
Yeah, that's amazing. Like the thoughts that you have been putting up for the past 40 minutes are just amazing. Since you said something about data privacy, so can you tell me a bit about your role at Community Lab as a data privacy officer? Given, we listen to all the scams from Facebook or other companies about your data. So can you tell me a bit about your role?
Absolutely. Aishwarya, I'll not explain what data privacy is. I'll explain why is it important, or I'll try to explain it as a whole,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
in simpler words. Um, so you know how we go to a restaurant and you give your number to them. Like when they ask your number, okay, so sir, ma'am, or whatever, like what's your number? You give your number, and couple of after couple of days you start getting messages, buy one get one, or 50% off, 30% off,
Yeah.
visit again, blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
Now that's something they cannot do,
Oh,
because I have not given my consent to them to send me
yeah.
messages,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's one example. Um, for people who are listening to this, go check Cambridge Analytica scam 2016 US elections.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
happened in US elections? There was a company called Cambridge Analytica. What they
Yes.
did, they basically so just imagine, Ishwarya, I give you a quiz. It will have a couple of questions and you'll have to answer them. Once you
Yeah.
answer them, I'll have all the data. For example, in the quiz I've asked, Aishwarya, do you get sad when a person fights with you? Aishwarya,
Yeah.
do you support guns? Aishwarya, do you own a gun?
Yeah.
Aishwarya, um do you support LGBT people from the LGBTQ community, or do
Yeah.
you not? So once I had all the data, so let's say I interviewed four people, or I sent that quiz to four people. Now I will distribute these people into into different categories. So I'll
Yeah.
place all the people who support LGBTQ people in one, let's say, box, and for people who don't, I'll put them in a different box. For people who support gun control, I'll put them in a different box. And then through Facebook, I'll show them the ads that will reiterate their mentality. For example, if I was the one who said, okay, I support guns,
Yeah.
Facebook will show me ads that this party guns are good, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they did. And it said that they influenced a lot of people to vote for Trump, right? You're not trying to like create some kind of controversy. You just can go to Netflix, and I forgot the name, but there's a brilliant documentary on that. And again, there's a whistleblower named Edward Snowden. Right now, I
Yeah.
think he's in
Yeah.
Russia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
basically, you give your data to someone, they cannot use it for anything for which you have not consent, for which you have not given your consent, right?
Yeah.
So at Community Lab, we get lot data of lot of people who are looking for various kinds of jobs. So
Hmm.
we get to
Yeah.
understand their college. We get to understand what education do they have. We know their phone numbers. We know
Yeah.
their
Email
like
IDs.
of course everything, right?
Yeah.
So in order to so I at Community Lab I create processes where I ensure that this data is only used for the delivery or service that we are giving. We are not using it for anything else. We are not selling the data to anyone. The data is not accessed by anyone who doesn't want it. For example,
Yeah.
Ishwarya, if I work in, let's say, finance department and you work in, let's say, HR department, I
Yeah.
should not be able to access HR data and you should not be able to access finance data because
Yeah.
it's confidential, right? Or
Yes.
anyone who is working in marketing, I should not be able to access that data, right? So
Yeah.
I ensure that this happens, like people can only access that data which they need just for the delivery of the service.
Yeah.
Data is not, for example, if let's say I'm a customer, I have given consent. Aishwarya, let's say you're in a marketing agency. I've given my consent that okay, I want to get newsletters for related to science fiction. You can only send me newsletters related to science fiction. You cannot send me a newsletter related to, let's say, football, because I have
Yeah.
not given you the consent.
Yeah.
And then I have the rights to you so that's what I do. I'll give you an example. After
Yes.
the
Yes.
GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, it's a law
Yeah.
in Europe. The organization I was working with, ISEC, so there's a phishing attack. Basically, someone hacked into our database and tried getting data of 40 lakhs people, 4 million interns. And
Yeah.
we were fined 20 million euros for that.
Oh.
Although nothing happened, the person could not get into, like, person could not get the data, but
Yeah.
just because the person, our processes were vulnerable, a person could get into that, and we were fined, couple of million euros for that.
Yeah.
So I ensure that does not happen at Community Lab. I ensure that we use all the data we get, we use it for the right purposes, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So, since you're the data privacy officer, where do you store the data, or do you use any third-party software, or where do you store the data exactly?
So there are a couple of tools, not getting too much into technicalities, but for example,
Yeah.
if your email ID is aishwarya@gmail.com,
Yeah.
we store it in Google Sheets, but when we store into Google Sheets, it will not show aishwarya@gmail.com. It will show, for example, 1634579
There will
at the
be
rate
a code.
xyz.com,
Oh,
right?
okay.
So these are
Okay.
called pseudonyms.
Yeah.
So, so people can still send an email using that particular address, but they will never get your data, and they can only use it, let's say, on their company email ID, right? So
Yeah.
that's one tool that we use. There's another tool that we use that's called tokenization. Basically, again, like, it's a bit technical, but all in all, we ensure that people, let's say, if I have data of 100 people from my neighborhood, so
Yeah.
their names will be retracted. Then no one would be able to know their names. Only you
Yeah.
would be able to see, data that you need. For example, if you have collected the data of how many people have gotten vaccinated, so you
Yeah.
will not be able to know which person has gotten vaccinated.
Oh,
You will know, okay, in my society, out of 100 people, 80 have gotten vaccinated.
yeah. Yeah.
I should not be able to, Ashwarya, I should not be able to know that if Ishwarya has gotten vaccinated or not. But
Yeah.
if I, for some health purposes, for maybe some purposes, if I want to know how many people in my society have gotten vaccinated, that I can do. But
Yeah.
I will never know if Ishwarya has gotten, I should not know if Ishwarya has gotten vaccinated or not. So
Yeah.
that's another thing. Plus, third, I create policies. So, I create rules in the organization that once you have, let's say, delivered your service to the customer, or for we call them labbers. So once you
Yeah,
have done that, you have to delete the data. Keeping the data after that is illegal in our company.
yeah.
So these are a couple of like policy making and then couple of tools that I use. So that's just a very brief of what I do, but again, not want to get into technicalities.
Yeah, no, no problem, no problem. So, since we are talking about softwares or tools, recently you told that, once you have recorded the audio or the video for the podcast, then you have to edit that, right? So you use few audio tools or video editors. So can you list a few audio editor tools or video editing tools?
So for audio, sorry, for audio I use Audacity. So it
Ah,
goes by Audacity.
yeah,
That is for audio editing. For video, I use Adobe Premiere Pro.
okay.
So for like posters and everything, I use Canva. It's pretty
Yeah,
easy, like
can.
it's very convenient.
Yeah,
Um,
it's can.
so yeah, these are three tools that I use. I don't know of any other tools, but I know there are other tools, but I because मेरा
Yeah.
काम इनसे चल रहा है, so I don't use other tools.
Yeah, yeah. So it's better to stick with the already tools that you're using. Okay.
Of course,
Yeah.
because again, main thing is कि record करना है podcast. Everything else is secondary.
Secondary. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just giving out the information or the thoughts to the society is the main purpose behind the
Yeah,
podcast.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Manik, for being on the show. We're almost about to end the show. So, before going, do you want to give a certain message to the people who want to start their own podcast?
Uh, so I'll just give one advice, just go for it. If it goes well, if it goes well. If it doesn't, then you learn something again, what we spoke in the
Yeah,
conversation. Just go for it.
yeah.
Don't because Aishwarya, I started the idea in June 2020 that I want to start a podcast, but I did not start till October 2020. So I missed good 5 months between them. So if I would have started 5 months ago, it would have been better.
Yeah.
So just go for it. You don't need a lot of investment as well. You can start it from zero as well, but I would say okay, get a good mic. So like an okay starter's mic would cost you around 3,000 INR,
Okay.
right? So get a mic worth 3,000 INR and just start doing it. You just don't think about it. There's nothing. It doesn't require a lot of financial investment. Of course, it requires your investment into it. But then don't wait. Just get into it because if you don't, then you'll regret it later, like me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Manik, for being on the show. And if I have to summarize the whole discussion, then I can say that the only message that you gave us is that it's okay to start. Even if it goes wrong, you will learn something, and if it goes right, then it's all well, right? So yeah. So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much to all the viewers. Please go to Spotify and subscribe to Manik's podcast, and do listen to all the new episodes. They are amazing. I have been an active listener to all his podcast episodes. They are just amazing because I get to learn a lot of things from every episode, and I can connect to the people because I can gain something psychologically, I would say. Because that's why I added the question of thought process, because definitely my thought process have developed since I've started listening to podcasts, because you are the one who introduced me to the podcasting thing. So yeah, thank you so much. And also please do subscribe to Mahayadi News channel, because every week we bring such fascinating discussions on different topics. So yeah, please do like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you so much to all the viewers. Thank you so much, Manik, for being here. Thank you everyone, and good night.
Thank you, Shreya. Keep up the good work.